But in years to come, she will tell others. But only after Joanne and Jordan leave the neighborhood. When she does, she'll say it was outrageous that she got into that bath. I don't know what I was thinking, she'll say. But I do know this. I came to like her. She was a good neighbor, kind, but never more so than that night. That was the kindest thing she ever did for me. I think about it often. When Dave's neighbor, Gerda Lobier, finally figured it out, it seemed so obvious to her that she just couldn't believe it took her so long. It struck her in the springtime. Carl, her husband, Carl, had gone all distant and was, acting moody again. You could almost say depressed. I am not depressed, said Carl. It's exactly like last spring, said Gerda. And that's when she put it together. You missed the fishing contest, said Gerda. For 22 years, Carl had organized his company's fishing game. A team, said Carl. I organized the team. I was the team captain. It wasn't a game, it was a tournament. For 22 years then, Carl had organized the company team in this fishing derby, and then Carl had retired. Well, you make it sound like it was my idea, said Carl. I would have kept working. And that is the rub. Carl never wanted to retire. And when he did, or more to the point, when he turned 65 and was forced to, it never occurred to him that he would be dropped from the fishing derby roster. It was as much his thing as the company's, for heaven's sakes, and it wasn't like this derby was what you'd call business. What was most galling was that he still received invitations to the company's barbecue, company golf tournament, and even to the fall food drive. Carl suspected Norm Harrison was behind his exclusion. Norm had leapt into Carl's seat before Carl had moved his last box out of his office. Norm had been maneuvering for a spot on the fishing team for years. The derby is a big deal, said Carl. If you knew anything about fishing, you'd know it's a big deal. And during his last 5 years as captain, but we came second, said Carl, twice, and third, once. We were overdue. But you never won, said Gerda. But we would have, said Carl. Exactly, said Gerda. And that is how Carl Lobier, and Bert, Dave's neighbor, Bert Turlington, and Kenny Wong and Dave came to find themselves a few weeks ago shoehorned into room 24 of the Red Squirrel Motel and Cabins. One of those places where the wafer is soap. The one wafer comes wrapped in pale green paper with a little picture of a squirrel gnawing on a pine cone. It was the last room and the only place with a room left. Everything else was booked solid. We were lucky to get it, said Carl. 2 double beds, 4 grown men. Dave and Kenny were sharing the bed next to the door. Bert and Carl had the other one. They arrived late on Friday night. At 5 on Saturday morning, Carl opened his eyes and saw Dave was already up. It's raining, said Dave. This was more or less the beginning of it. 5 in the morning, in the rain, room 24 of the Red Squirrel Motel, half a mile from Big Lake Boireau. They had 2 days. They could catch as many fish as they wanted, but each of them were only allowed to keep and submit one to the contest. Rest had to be thrown back. There were 2 prizes, one for the biggest single fish, the other for the team total.